For years, Heartland fans have carried a heartbreaking question. Is Ty Borden truly gone forever? The grief, the longing, the endless hope it never felt real, that Amy's greatest love could simply vanish. But what if the truth was never what it seemed? What if the most shocking twist in Heartland history was just waiting to be uncovered? Season 19, Episode 1 delivers a jaw-dropping, heart-stopping revelation that no one saw coming. A moment so powerful, so unexpected, it will shake everything you thought you knew about love, loss, and fate itself. Buckle up because this changes everything. The episode opens in an almost eerie, calm, too quiet, too still, as if the world is holding its breath. The golden morning light spills over the rolling fields of Heartland Ranch, the wind murmurs through the trees, and the distant nickers of horses break the silence. Inside the barn, Amy Fleming moves through the familiar motions, her hands instinctively brushing Spartan's coat, her heart tethered to a routine that has long been her solace. But today feels different. There's a strange weight in the air, an unshakable tension pressing down on her chest. She pauses, glancing around as if expecting to see something or someone lurking in the shadows of memory. It's nothing, she tells herself. Just the lingering ache of a love lost, the quiet heaviness of a life without Ty. And yet, deep down, she knows. Something is coming. But then she hears it. At first, it's barely distinguishable, a sound so faint it could be mistaken for the wind or the creaking of the barn. However, as the seconds pass, the sound becomes clearer. It's the rhythmic beat of hooves, the unmistakable sound of a horse trotting down the dirt road that leads to Heartland. Amy's heart stops in her chest. Her breath catches in her throat. She freezes, her entire body rigid, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. Could it be? It couldn't be, not after all these years. With a sudden rush of disbelief, Amy takes a step forward, her eyes squinting into the distance. The figure is still too far away to make out clearly, but something about the way they ride, the posture of the rider, it feels so familiar. She feels dizzy, her vision blurring as she struggles to hold on to the reality she's known since Ty's death. Could it really be him? Amy's mind races, her pulse quickens, and before she knows it, she's moving faster than she ever has before. Her legs carry her through the barn and down the path, as if her body knows the truth before her mind can catch up. The figure draws nearer, and now it's undeniable. She knows that posture. She knows that horse. She knows that man. Ty Borden is back. The man she thought was gone forever, the love ripped from her life in an instant, stands just a few yards away. Time slows. Her heart pounds like a drum, each beat echoing the flood of emotions crashing through her: joy, disbelief, anger, relief. Ty. The name escapes her lips, fragile at first, a whisper lost in the wind. Then, louder. Desperate. Ty. His horse stills. He turns. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, Amy sees him, the man she loved, the man she mourned but changed. His gaze, deep and stormy, holds a sorrow she could never have imagined. Pain, longing, love, all colliding in a single shattering instant. Before she can think, she's running. He dismounts just as she reaches him. And then she's in his arms, clinging to him like he might vanish if she lets go. Tears streak her face, her breath ragged, her body trembling against his. Ty holds her just as fiercely, his grip unyielding, his own tears warm against her hair. His voice, rough with emotion, barely rises above the sound of their hearts hammering in unison. I'm here, Amy. I'm home. The words she ached to hear, the words that shatter the walls she built to survive losing him. The camera lingers, capturing the raw intensity of the moment. But beyond them, the Heartland family watches, frozen in stunned silence. They, too, loved him. They, too, grieved. And now, faced with the impossible truth, one thing is certain: Ty Borden is back. But how? Why? And more importantly, what has happened to him in the years he's been gone? Jack Bartlett, always the anchor of the family, is the first to see Ty. The strong, steady man who had always been the rock for his family is suddenly undone. He stood by Amy through her darkest days. He's seen her struggle. But this is something else. Jack's usually unwavering demeanor falters. His sharp blue eyes, so often full of control, are now filled with confusion, disbelief, and emotion he's never allowed himself to express. He grips the railing of the porch, his knuckles turning white as he tries to make sense of what he's seeing. He blinks rapidly, his breathing growing unsteady. Could it really be Ty? The boy he once mentored? The man he saw as a son? Is this some cruel dream, or is this real? His coffee cup slips from his hand, shattering on the floor, the sound harsh and jarring. But Jack doesn't move. He can't. His body is frozen, his mind racing. The second the truth clicks, Jack's voice breaks. Ty? It's a whisper, rough and strained, full of everything he's carried. For years, silence carried the weight of grief, guilt, and love unspoken, unbearable. And then, in a moment no one saw coming, Jack moves. His steps are heavy, his breath uneven. He crosses the space between them, his strong, weathered hands trembling as he grips Ty's shoulders. And then his stoic walls shatter. Jack pulls Ty into a fierce, bone-crushing embrace, holding on to him as if letting go would mean losing him all over again. The unshakable pillar of Heartland, the strongest man in their family, suddenly lays bare his deepest vulnerability. His body trembles, his voice cracks, and through tears he never wanted to shed, he whispers, "You came back?" Raw, unfiltered, a moment too powerful for words. But this isn't just the return of a man. It's the return of a missing piece of Jack's soul, a piece he thought was lost forever. And yet, with Ty's return comes a storm. The peace of Heartland is shattered, the past demanding to be reckoned with. Where has he been? What has he endured? And what does his presence mean for Amy, for Lindy, for the home he left behind? The very air on the ranch feels different now, as if even the horses sense the shift. The people, the land, everything holds its breath. Amy, still reeling from the shock, slowly steps back, her pulse racing. Her eyes scan Ty's face, desperate to make sense of the impossible. Is this real? The man she loved, the man she mourned, the father of her child, stands before her, looking at her like no time has passed. But time has passed. Ty seems to understand. His expression softens, a bittersweet smile playing at his lips. Gently, he cups her face, his calloused hands warm against her skin. His voice, thick with emotion, carries the words that shake her to the core. I never wanted to leave, Amy. I never stopped loving you. Or Lindy. The world tilts. His words crash into her, a tidal wave of everything she thought she'd buried. Years of loneliness, of sleepless nights in an empty bed, of raising their daughter alone, of believing she had no choice but to move forward without him. And now, here he is. A spark of hope in a darkness she had learned to live with. Her voice is barely a whisper, raw and fragile. How is this possible? We thought you were gone, Ty. How are you here? No anger. No blame. Just aching disbelief and the need to understand. Ty exhales, his gaze shadowed by something deeper, something unspoken. He hesitates, as if searching for words that don't exist. I don't even know how to explain it, he finally says, voice quiet, heavy. It's a long story, Amy. One that's not easy to tell. But I'm here now. That's all I know. And in that moment, nothing else matters. Amy takes a step back, her mind racing. The years of grief, the uncertainty, the loneliness, all of it feels like it's crashing down on her in an instant. She looks around as if expecting to see some sign, some clue that this is all real. She spots Spartan in the distance, grazing in the field, and for a moment, everything seems to ground her. This is real. Ty is really here. But the reunion, as emotional and powerful as it is far from over. Amy still has so many questions, and deep down, she knows that there's so much more to Ty's return than meets the eye. What happened to him? Where has he been all this time? Why did he disappear without a trace, leaving everyone behind to grieve his loss? Just as Amy begins to process the gravity of the moment, a sound breaks the silence, a familiar voice. What's going on here? Lou's voice is full of concern as she steps out from the house. She's always been the rock for Amy, ever the protector, and the moment her eyes land on Ty, everything stops. Her breath catches in her throat, her eyes wide with disbelief. She stares at him, her mind struggling to comprehend what she's seeing. Her voice trembles as she steps forward, shaking her head. This can't be real. You're not Ty. Ty looks at her. Her expression is full of regret. Lou, I never wanted you to carry this burden. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt any of you. Tears spring to Lou's eyes as she tries to process what's happening. The emotions she thought she had buried deep inside, the pain she had carried silently, now come rushing to the surface. She had always known Ty as part of their family, a man who had earned her trust and love. But now, seeing him alive after all this time, it's like a dream she never thought would come true. Oh my God, Ty, we thought you were gone. We thought we lost you. Lou's voice cracks as she approaches him, her steps hesitant, but driven by the desperate need to hold on to him. As she reaches him, she doesn't hesitate. She throws her arms around him, pulling him close, the sobs racking her body as she clings to him. It's not graceful or composed, it's raw, desperate, and full of a relief she didn't know she still had in her. I never thought I'd get to tell you how much I missed you, Lou sobs into his chest. Ty holds her tightly, his voice just above a whisper. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to leave like that. The emotion between them is overwhelming. Lou, the tough, independent sister, the one who always held it together, now broken in Ty's arms, is a sight Amy never thought she'd see. The years of pain, the unspoken grief of losing someone they all loved so dearly, have finally found their release. But as Lo pulls back, wiping her tears, there's an undeniable realization in her eyes. Ty's return brings with it not just joy, but also a flood of unresolved feelings and questions. And Lou isn't the only one. Georgie, too, is struggling to process this new reality. She has always looked up to Ty as the older brother she never had. He was there for her when no one else believed in her, when she was struggling with her own demons. But now, seeing him in the flesh after all this time, it feels impossible to believe. Georgie stands frozen, her hands clenched at her sides, her eyes wide with shock. She's overwhelmed, the flood of emotions threatening to drown her. Finally, she opens her mouth, her voice a hoarse whisper. Ty. Ty turns to her, his eyes softening. Georgie, he says quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I'm here now. I swear I never wanted to leave you. Before she can even process what's happening, Georgie runs into his arms. She can't help it. The floodgates open, and she begins to sob, not caring who sees. It's a release she's been holding on to for far too long. She pounds her fists against his chest, not out of anger, but out of pure heartbreak. I thought you were gone. I never even got to say goodbye, she cries, clinging to him as though her life depended on it. Ty pulls her close, his arms enveloping her. I'm here now. I promise you, Georgie, I'm here. But even in the midst of these powerful reunions, the questions linger like shadows. What is Ty hiding? Why did he disappear? And why now? Why has he come back after all this time? The answers remain buried beneath layers of secrecy and pain, and no amount of relief can erase the weight of the unknown. This homecoming is just the beginning. The truth, no matter how devastating, is waiting to surface. The cracks are already beginning to show. As Ty embraces each member of the family, it's clear that while their hearts may welcome him, the past won't let go so easily. The weight of his absence, the scars of unanswered questions, linger in the air. And Ty, while grateful, while relieved, carries something unseen. An invisible burden. A darkness no one is ready to face just yet. Amy's pulse still races. She holds on to him like she's afraid he'll slip through her fingers, vanish all over again. This moment, this brief, fragile moment, feels like a lifeline. But deep down, she knows that love alone won't fill the void he left behind. She takes a slow step back, her gaze searching his face. Is he still the same man? The man who made her laugh, who stood by her in her darkest days? Or is he someone changed, shaped by a life she was never a part of? There are signs, small but unmistakable. The quiet intensity in his eyes. The deep-set lines on his face that weren't there before. A weight in his posture, as if he's carrying something too heavy to put into words. A life lived beyond Heartland. Beyond safety. Beyond everything she knew of him. And yet, she doesn't ask. Not yet. The truth feels too big, too daunting to confront in the middle of such an overwhelming reunion. But no matter how much she wants to ignore it, the unspoken questions press against her chest like a tightening grip. She steadies herself, forcing in a breath. She has to know. Ty, she whispers, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. Where have you been? Why did you leave us without a word? The question lands like a thunderclap, heavy and inescapable. Ty flinches just barely, but Amy sees it. A flicker of hesitation, the internal war raging behind his stormy gaze. He opens his mouth, but the words catch in his throat. He shifts, eyes darting across the familiar landscape of Heartland, as if searching for an anchor in a world that now feels so distant. I don't know how to explain it, Amy. His voice is rough, barely above a whisper. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted to leave you. Or Lindy. But there were things I had to do, things I didn't have a choice in. Amy's chest tightens. She wants to trust him, wants to believe in the man standing before her. But trust isn't built on half-truths. And after years of silence, after nights spent wondering if she would ever see him again, vague explanations aren't enough. Not anymore. Ty, she presses, we've all been living with this. This hole in our hearts. You've been gone for so long, and now you're here, and everything is different. I just need to know. Ty steps closer, his expression softening as he reaches out to touch her arm. Amy, I wish I could tell you everything. I really do. But there's a part of this story that's not easy to explain. It's a part of me that I can't bring myself to talk about yet. He glances over at the rest of the family, who have been watching the scene unfold with mixed emotions, some with tears in their eyes, others with confusion and concern. But I'm here now. I swear, I'm not going anywhere. Amy wants to push him further, to demand answers, but something about the look in his eyes makes her pause. She has been waiting for this moment for so long, and yet something about it doesn't feel real. The weight of the unknown sits heavily on her shoulders. She feels like she's standing on the edge of something massive, something that could change everything, but she's afraid to step forward and risk shattering what little hope she's allowed herself to feel. Meanwhile, Lo, still reeling from the shock of seeing Ty alive, watches the conversation unfold. She's happy, yes, but also torn. Her own grief over losing Ty was something she never fully processed. As the older sister, she always felt a responsibility to protect Amy, to be strong. But now, standing here, witnessing the emotional reunion between Amy and Ty, Lou can't ignore the feelings that are bubbling up within her. She wants to be happy for them, but she also feels a sense of betrayal. Ty's absence was something she had to carry for years, and now that he's back, she's unsure how to navigate the delicate balance between supporting Amy and processing her own emotions. Jack stands in silence, his expression unreadable, yet his eyes betray the storm raging inside him. He has always been Amy's rock, the unwavering presence that guided her through life's hardest trials. But now, standing in the wake of Ty's return, Jack is confronted with something far more complicated. Ty wasn't just a son-in-law, he was like a son. A young man Jack mentored, guided, and loved as his own. Losing him left a wound that never truly healed, a space no one, not even Jack, could fill. And now, seeing him standing here, flesh and blood, stirs everything back to the surface. The grief, the anger, the questions. Jack clenches his jaw, forcing himself to stay composed. But the cracks in his tough exterior are there the way his hands tighten at his sides, the flicker of emotion in his eyes. He thought he had made peace with the past, but the past has just walked through the door. The silence is thick, stretching between them like an invisible wall. Then, Ty finally speaks, his voice heavy with everything he still can't say. "I know there's so much more to explain, but I just need time." His eyes sweep across the faces of the family he left behind, each one holding a different kind of pain. "We've all been through so much, and I don't want to rush this. But please just know I never chose to disappear. I never wanted to hurt any of you." His words linger, but they don't bring closure. Not yet. Because wounds this deep aren't healed with words alone. A heavy silence settles over them, thick with tension, unspoken fears, and emotions too raw to name. The family stands together, yet fractured, bound by love, yet divided by unanswered questions. The mystery of Ty's disappearance looms over them like a storm cloud, its weight pressing down on their shoulders. Too much has been left unsaid. Too many wounds have festered in the dark. And though none of them are ready for the truths that will soon unfold, one thing is certain: this is just the beginning. The days that follow are a whirlwind of emotions, a tangled web of joy, doubt, and quiet reflection. Each member of the family struggles to process his return, caught between relief and the nagging ache of uncertainty. They watch him, searching for glimpses of the Ty they once knew, measuring the distance between who he was and who he has become. The ranch, once echoing with the emptiness of his absence, now feels different, alive with the tension of unresolved pasts and the whisper of new beginnings. Yet beneath it all, a fragile hope lingers. Because no matter how complicated the road ahead may be, one undeniable truth remains: Ty is home. Amy, despite her joy at having Ty back, finds herself wrestling with emotions she didn't expect. Every moment with him feels like a blessing, but the weight of all the unanswered questions threatens to overshadow their reunion. It's not just "where have you been?" that lingers in her mind, but the deeper question: why didn't you come back sooner? Why didn't you fight harder to come home to us? She wants to believe that the love they shared can heal the rift that has formed in his absence, but a part of her remains guarded, afraid of being hurt again. One evening, as they sit together in the barn, Amy finally gathers the courage to ask the question that has been haunting her.